One metric you will never hear from this brand is how many units we have sold, right? Because I think it's a BS metric in franchising, plainly.
Yes,
I think we're in the business of opening stores. And at the end of the day, that means supporting our franchisees. And we understand squarely that we are successful when our franchisees are successful, period.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the latest edition of Fran Coach's Franchising 101 podcast. I'm Tim Parmeter, founder and CEO of Fran Coach and your podcast host. Today, we've got a brand joining us today. I'm really looking forward to chatting with these guys. I am a little fangirly from a consumer standpoint. I love what they do. I've had a great experience there myself, and wish there was one a little bit closer. I'd probably be a regular customer. But also a incredibly intriguing business model. Does have a brick and mortar, but about as low level overhead and investment as humanly possible. It's got recurring revenue, super easy to scale. Labor's pretty, I don't want to say easy, but easier from that standpoint. So excited to get to the CEO of this brand. They've also had an incredible announcement about the quality of their product that's come out recently that we get to share with you today too. So that's coming up in a moment. First, a quick reminder of who we are at Fran Coach. Fran Coach is the premier franchise consulting firm. Our number one goal is to properly educate you on franchise ownership to determine if you should own one. And if so, we're going to help you find your absolute best fit. Our educational approach ensures we focus on the client's best interest. We are not here to sell you a franchise. In fact, we don't sell anything. Finding the best franchise owned is an incredibly personalized and individualized process that can only work with a team of experts focused on what is truly most important. That's you. Fran Coach, our services are always 100% free to you, so reach out to our team. Click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, folks, we are back on the Franchising 101 podcast and really looking forward to chatting with our guest today. We have the CEO of Stretch Zone, Mr. Tony Zaccario. Tony, thanks for joining us.
Tim, thanks for having me.
I am looking forward to talking to you, and if I do a little extra kissing up, it has nothing to do with wanting like a free stretch. But looking forward to talking to you. I've got a bunch of things lined up for us to discuss about Stretch Zone. I know we've got a huge thing. We've got to also kind of drop to everybody about that. But franchising is so much of a people business. Give us a story on you. How did you kind of get into this world and kind of get hooked up with Stretch Zone?
No, franchising is definitely it's a tight-knit industry, isn't it? I know we were talking about prior to this, all the people that we know, and I'm sure we have many familiar friends. But for me, franchising is brand new, right? Stretch Zone was the first endeavor into franchising. When we first started the brand, I joined my partner Jordan Gold, who had dedicated his life to this unique and proprietary method that is the Stretch Zone method. And he was just starting to open up kind of the brick and mortar retail model. And so when I first stumbled across Stretch Zone, we had 4 locations. It was back in early 2016. We had not a clue what franchising was. Quite frankly, when I first came across the brand, the 4 units that we had, it was a true startup. Calling it dysfunctional is probably being kind to what it actually was. It was hand-me-down furniture, tile floors. We didn't have a website. And in spite of all that dysfunction, though, the 4 units were really successful. And so I came on board to help build a business around the Stretch, right? We were just trying to grow the power of Stretch Zone through the corporate model, and got to about 10 or 12 corporate locations, learned about the vehicle of franchising in 2017, and really felt that it aligned with our growth strategy, right? Being that we have a low barrier of entry from a capital perspective. It's a very simple business model, but very powerful, right? And it resonated with a lot of not just consumers, but prospective franchisees. And so we started franchising in 2017. Fast forward to today, we just opened up store number, I believe, 421 up in Toronto, and still without a single store failure. And so it's been an incredible journey thus far, and many stories to tell, but I'm excited to talk about today.
So, and you think like back to 2016, assisted stretch, I'm going to guess you said we do assisted stretching to most people. Mm-hmm. They're going to be like, what? Huh? how much just that has come over the last decade, but there's still a little education on that of just exactly what it is. So maybe for somebody that's not super familiar with it, what the heck is stretch zone?
Yeah, no, I think it's, that was a tough part in the early days. People don't know what stretching is at all, let alone what stretch zone does. And for stretch zone, we use a proprietary method of stretching, right? So it's all protocol based. We leverage a patented strapping system to deliver the most effective and now the proven, probably the best assisted stretch out there. And so I'd say proven, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But no, so in other words, members come in, lay on a comfortable table and somewhere where we do all the work and you get all the benefits. And I think what's always been special about Stretch Zone is everyone knows at a common sense they need to stretch. I think there's two different buckets of people that walk in our doors. The one bucket that literally does not know how to stretch, and the other bucket that knows they need to stretch, but this is me, too lazy to do so on their own, right? And I see my Stretch Zones were able to service that need. And also I think we quickly realized when growing this brand, it's not just those that are active and the weekend warriors and the athletes that need stretching. Really, our target member is really 45 and up. It's pretty much a 50-50 male-female split. Because what you realize is that stretching can have such a profound impact on people's lifestyles, whether they're active or sedentary. And it's been a big reason why I've been able to grow. So no, that's what we do here at Stretch Zone. But yes, in the early days, educating the consumer was tough, right? And that's why we've always, a kind of a brand pillar, is we've always offered the first stretch free. Because we understand that there is a little bit of a battle to educate the consumer. As much as I talk about it, as much as the Stretch Zone effect, which is the clinical research that we just launched, as much as we have all these data points, at the end of the day, the consumer will not understand the impact it can have on their life until they experience it firsthand themselves.
Yeah. Yep. No, 100%. And I will tell you when, and there's certainly there are a couple other places out there that kind of do this differently, of course, but when this first concept kind of came out, and I remember somebody with the brand that was telling me about it, and I'm like, come on, stretching? Are you serious? What are we doing? And it was the same thing, Tony. They're like, go try. Right. And in fact, they were accurate, but I was kind of pretended like I was offended. They're like, you're in our age demographic. And I'm like, right. You just called me old, but okay. And I did. And I went, and I was a former athlete all through college, and I'm still active-ish. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm like, oh my, I was blown away. Right. And It was the lame version of what you guys do, or what assisted stretching is, which I'm sure you can guess where I went. And so no, it's super cool. So you kind of get that hook of hey, try one for free, because you have the overwhelming confidence. They're going to go, oh, okay, I get it now. Right. And so I don't want to just cut to the chase on this, because I think this is super cool. And so I went maybe a few weeks ago, you guys had kind of a pretty big announcement on the methodology, right, that you guys use at Stretch Zone. I don't want to bury the lead, because I think this is super cool. And so share a little bit about what that's all about.
No, I mean, it's pretty incredible what we're able to do and what we found. And so what we're alluding to is we launched the Stretch Zone Effect. It was published in the Journal of Musculoskeletal Disorders and Treatment, which is a peer-reviewed journal. And so early last year, we kind of embarked on this journey to prove out the efficacy of the Stretch Zone method. And in a large part, it came from two reasons, right? We want to give our franchisees some messaging tools. Right. And I think the one thing you said is we always offer the first stretch free because we have such conviction behind our service, right? And we know that it is top notch and it will stand up against anything out there. Well, that same conviction is why we were willing to put it through the rigor of clinical research and academia, right, in a peer-reviewed journal. And the reason why I think it's so transformative, outside of obviously the message you'll talk about for Stretch Zone, but I think in the health and wellness space, I mean, in your world, you probably hear this all the time. Everyone thinks they have the best workout. Everyone thinks they have the best modality. And it's like, well, listen, if you think you have the best, then put it to the test, right? And there's plenty of ways to go and test it out. And so I do hope we're trendsetters in that stance, because we always believed we had the best stretch and the best assisted stretch. And now we have the clinical data to go ahead and the stats to prove it. And so for us, when we launched the Stretch Zone Effect to the public, literally just a few weeks ago, it made a big splash. And I think it resonated with a lot of consumers and is doing incredible for franchisees, because instead of us just saying, Tim, try it yourself, try it for yourself, try it for yourself, now we can put real stats behind it. And when we're able to say things like, hey, listen, members that came in saw a 78% reduction in pain, right? For those members that came in, 58% reported better sleep, 66% reported more energy. The fact that we're able to make those claims is the only reason, because we have the clinical data to support it. But when you hear that as a consumer, you, Tim, instead of saying just try it out for yourself, Tim, most people don't even understand that stretching, let alone something like stretching, can have such an impact on their lifestyle and how they feel. They just associate it with moving better. And I don't think they associate enough with feeling better. So in a lot of ways, what we released is it's validating. In some ways, it's surprising, right? To the degree and the statistical significance, it's incredibly encouraging and a little bit surprising. But we've heard these testimonials time in and time, day in and day out for the last years. It's just nice to be able to say in such a really concise manner.
Yeah. Well, it's quantifiable, and it's also not coming from some clever marketing
right.
Those pesky PR people, right? And so that it's not coming just from that. Where it's always use the example of the movie Elf, right? And he walks in, he's like, "Congratulations for the world's best coffee," right? They didn't win that award; they just put that on there. You guys aren't just saying it; you've got all of the data and the backing from that. When you guys kind of launched on that, going through that process, what were your expectations? And kind of did the end results match that, exceed that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think when you're trying to do proper research and a little bit of background in it, and so when I started formulating it, to do it in the right way, because you obviously want to protect it from any kind of bias.
Right.
And so when you're launching the study, you want to let the data tell a story. And so when I say we have the conviction behind the product, I mean, I'm sure enough, and many people listening, you might be able to do a study, but to get to the level of statistical significance to make health claims to be in a peer-reviewed journal, you have to really do it the right way. And so the hypothesis that we had when going into it was that obviously the more that you stretch, you're going to see improvements in range of motion, right? So you're going to see the degrees in range of motion increase. We also tied frequency to it. And then we layered it with a qualitative element, which is why we're able to make the energy claims, the pain claims, so on and so forth. What surprised me was seeing just how better people were moving, especially relative to frequency. Those that came in multiple times a week saw 25% better results than those that came in once a week, which is really significant. And I think the other piece too is, again, I think the feeling data, right? So we anticipated to see kind of trendular data, meaning we expected to be able to say we saw people sleeping better. Yeah. We didn't think that we'd be able to say 58% literally reported better sleep, and that to the level of statistical significance. And that was really encouraging and really surprising. And so I think at the end of the day, again, it's validating, but not overly surprising. But to see the magnitude of the results is pretty incredible and really encouraging.
Yeah, and I'm sure we probably could do several episodes just of this, but maybe give it I'm sure you've heard thousands of stories from your members that have come in there. Maybe give us an example of something that kind of sticks in your mind of that improvement and how that has really helped their overall life.
I'll tell you one that has always resonated. This is at a very old store, and it was a husband and wife, elderly couple, right, coming in. Thinking the range is around late 70s, and all of a sudden the guy goes back, and so their husband and wife, they get off the table and they go ahead and they start putting their shoes back on, and the wife comes running back over to the table. She gets her stuff, and she was more the caretaker of him. He was a little bit not in great shape, and she starts kind of breaking down in tears and getting all uppity, and she's like, who put his shoes on? Who put his shoes on? And so everyone's like, what are you talking about? No one put his shoes on. He put his shoes on himself. And that was the first time in years that he'd been able to put his shoes on by himself.
Oh my gosh.
And so you hear things like that, which is why we've always believed in our service. And I think anyone who tries it for the first time has the same conviction behind it. But it's stuff like that where it's just it's so easy to get behind. If you're a team member inside of our studio, franchisee, we're really making a difference in the world. And now just to have, again, the data to back it, it's incredible.
Yeah. And you talk about that your members kind of skew in that older demographic. One of the things, and I may say this and you may go, Tim, oh my gosh, that's the dumbest thing ever. Don't ever say that about stretch zone again. But again, being a former athlete and you watch pick your major sport, a college, football game or basketball or whatever. And what do you see before the game? You see those athletes being stretched, not just stretching, being stretched, right? And you're like, in some ways, and I've kind of used that for people that have some sort of sports context to them, and they're like, oh, right, and how prevalent that is in just high level athletes, and you're like, dang, if that's allowing them to prevent injury, be like more longevity, all of those things, maybe it could work for my 57-year-old ass as well, right? And so, do you still see some of that kind of younger, like maybe higher level athlete come in as well?
Oh, I mean, sure, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, what's always made stretch zone special, when I first came to it, I thought, listen, this is great for weekend warriors. And the answer is yes, but it's also great for those that are sedentary, inactive, that haven't moved in a long time, because they can have a more profound impact on their lifestyle. I mean, listen, it's the reason why we were able to attract someone like Drew Brees, who's a brand partner.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about it, in a similar level publication, Today Show last week in Fox Business. We're talking about like what drew him to it. It was exactly that. Like he got more out of the game. But so it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard by all means, but actually it'll take it to another level. So you resonate with the athlete that stretches. When we talk about how necessary like stretch zone is in implementing your day-to-day lifestyle, regardless of what you're doing or not doing, the comparison we always give is like when you look at, and this, now you might say, Tony, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. When you look at the animal kingdom as a whole, right? So for everyone that's listening that has a cat or dog, what's the first thing they do when they wake up from a nap or when they wake up?
Yeah.
What is literally the first thing they do? They stretch.
Yeah.
They stretch and they get mobile. And so it is something that is so critical to mobility that I think we've just rejected, right? And at the end of the day, when you think about what we do throughout the day, well, we're sitting right now for this interview. I'm going to sit in the car on my ride home. Yeah. You might sit on the couch. You're not moving as much, and it really has a negative impact on someone's life, and we're able to undo that.
Yeah, it's where you see like city. I saw something that's on it. City is the new smoking, right? Is how how dangerous it is, and the stretching of the pets is funny when we take my wife's dog out for a walk, and if you say, Henry, you want to go for a walk, the first thing he does is downward dog, right? And it's like
stretches the back legs out,
stretch it out, boy. Like we're really going, like we're going to town out there. But it's funny, it's true. And so how was the partnership with Drew Brees? And I heard him speak. In fact, I think it was at the IFA a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. But it talked about some of the things he had incorporated later in his career along these lines, helped him extend his career. But how, like, kind of what's his association, or how has that kind of helped the brand overall?
No, I mean, it's been, it's funny because, well, first I'll say is like Drew's a top class person. Like everything you think of him, hear from him, he is just an incredible individual and really savvy business, has a really savvy business mind, let alone the professional side, now Hall of Famer. But no, when he first approached us, he fell in love with the service first. And he was a big believer in the service. He implemented his regiment, and that's when he decided to come on. We talked about him becoming a franchisee, and he joined his partners becoming a franchisee in New Orleans, Indianapolis, and then as an ambassador, right? So he sat on our board for a little bit in the early days, and so like he's been heavily involved in the brand, and it's funny because philosophically, I'm actually not a big believer in ambassadorship as a whole, right? I think there's a lot of it's tricky as a CEO and as an owner because you want to leverage the likeness to the maximum benefit to your franchisees, the consumer, but you don't want any ambassador, let alone how great they are, to become the brand, right? And so I think it's that push and pull. But no, I think he's been very validating for franchisees. I think he's been such a team player. Like we do pickleball contests where like he gives up his time to where winners will go ahead and we fly him out to San Diego, play pickleball with Drew, and he has a great time. And so he's been incredible.
Nice. I try not to hold that association against you guys because I grew up in Indiana and I'm an IU fan and he went to Purdue, so there is a little of like, but whatever. We'll let that slide. So talk a little bit like back to the business model and the owner, right? So owners clearly aren't in there, stretching people all day long. But some of the things that you guys look for, what they're doing, maybe some traits or characteristics that really align for you guys.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the growth of Stretch On as a whole is, I don't say this to minimize the hard work of all our franchisees and our team here. It's a very simple business, right? We're in the people business. We have no waste. We have no spoilage. We have no moving inventory. It's 1,000 square foot box with tables and people. And at the end of the day, we're in the people business. And when you have such a simplistic business, you're able to attract a wide variety of franchisees, right? We have many first-time business owners, many. And because it's such a low barrier of entry from a capital perspective, this is their opportunity to maybe break out from, the corporate grind, or to, pursue that entrepreneurial spirit that they have. And they're able to find a tremendous amount of success because you have the guardrails around the business and the franchise support, and you have the brand likeness tied to Drew Brees and its research study and all this other stuff. On the same token, we have the other end of the spectrum. We have people that are 20-unit owners that are very savvy, have a high level of business acumen, that like it for the same reasons and the simplicity, but more for the scalability, because they view that they can scale very quickly, which is why I also have many multi-unit owners. And so when you ask what's the common thread behind all of them, is they're all very passionate about wellness. They're all very passionate about helping others. And really what we look for predominantly is, because of the simplicity, is I just want someone who's actively involved in the business. And again, to your point, I don't need someone in there stretching every day, nor quite frankly, do I want them to.
Right.
They need to be working on the business, not in the business. And I think that's what's most important for us.
Yeah. So for that owner that's in there, and you talk about some of the growth potential with this, talk about some of the support mechanisms that you're giving them, sure. Right? Of again, I'm going to come in here as an owner. I'm not the stretcher. I don't know how to stretch, but I have to find the right people, and be able to find the right people and make sure that they are doing things properly. Talk a little bit about the support you guys provide the owners for that.
I mean, it starts from store opening, right? You have a dedicated support line and really an individual that will guide you through the opening process. And I think that's probably the biggest learning curve for any owner, right? Because you're never familiar with real estate negotiations, there's a lot, right? And from there on out, you pretty much have a dedicated support team through an FBC structure, so franchise business coach that are out there. I think common sense tells us we don't get to 421 locations without a single failure if we don't have the support. And which is why we always kind of tell people, one metric you will never hear from this brand is how many units we have sold, right? Because I think it's a BS metric in franchising, plainly.
Yes,
I think we're in the business of opening stores. And at the end of the day, that means supporting our franchisees. And we understand squarely that we are successful when our franchisees are successful, period. Yes. And if we're able to promote that success for them, then they're more inclined to open up more units, and it's synergistic and it's great. And I think we're people in franchising, and it's what we at the IFA are always trying to combat, right? We're responsible franchising, and I think people just get skewed and they get in the franchise sales game, and they forget the fact that need still a whole system of support. Yeah.
And I will spare everyone my soapbox on franchise sales organizations. So the word sales should not be involved. And if it is, come talk to me, because we'll run you away from them. So this isn't exactly boutique fitness, but there's some similarities to it. And a lot of this is membership driven, right? Anybody could just come in off the street, and obviously I get the first one for free, but I could just come back in at any point and pay for this. But a lot of this is membership driven. So there's some similarities there. Is it fair to say there's some similarities?
Of course. I mean, of course there is. With boutique, I think what makes it unique is that we're not competitive to the fitness space, and that's been really
complementary at times, right?
It's very complementary, and especially when we're looking for service-based plazas, we get on really well and that's what's. And this is where this data really does, and the research helps, is because you realize that it's not just complementary, it's synergistic with whatever you're doing in lifestyle. So what you see often in the fitness space is you might have a member that will spend a year at Orange Theory. Then they get into Pilates, and they go to a year at Pilates. And they'll cycle back to Orange Theory, but they're not going to stay at. Stretch Zone can be complementary to that entire process where you are. And so we're always complementary to the fitness space.
And it's and I think the piece that's totally different in that because the space is half the size, right? If not even less than some of those might be closer to 3,000 square feet. your investment is super low compared to those, yet you've still got the membership model from it, and it kind of goes back to that
the recurring revenue and all
right?
that. Yeah,
From that
speed to open is a big one too. I mean, like we when you think about 1,000 square feet, and really what drives up any kind of ancillary cost is build out. And I mean, I remember our 400 store opening up in Pittsburgh. They literally, from lease signing to opening, was 2 weeks. Because the flooring worked out, right? We shipped the entire store in a box. We kind of joke with our franchisees, like, all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver to put your store together, because we have someone put the decals up.
Right.
But they were able to open up in 2 weeks. They laid the carpet themselves, the owners. And I think that's what's, franchising, that's what makes franchising special. We talk about it, like, franchising means local. And franchising, at the end of the day, is a culmination of a bunch of small business owners that are leveraging brand synergy and brand support. Yep. And that's what I love about this brand. I love about franchising.
Yeah. And you mentioned the local thing, and I know that's the new little buzz phrase from the IFA, which is way the hell better than the responsible franchising. If you're not going to define responsible and irresponsible, it's kind of ridiculous. But the local is so amazing, right? Like, it's when I first heard that, I'm like, oh my gosh, why have we not all been talking about this? Because yes, here's StretchZone, this brand with 400 plus locations all over the country. I think some international as well, right? But you've got all of these things, but it is locally owned. And when you talk about that from an owner's standpoint, whether they have one or they have 21 locations, you kind of really want that person that's comfortable and eager to get out, to be logoed up in the community and be proud to get out there and talk about. That's massively important for you guys, right?
For sure. And I think, the responsible franchising, good intent, but yes, I agree on the definition of responsible, or holding
someone accountable for not being.
Correct. As a board member of the IFA, I think the intent was there, and everything was in a good place. But the franchising means local, I think, is much better because I think what people always forget, they see McDonald's and they just assume this massive brand. And they forget that there's not, right? There's one person running that location that cares, that is part of your community. And so I think that gets missed. And at the end of the day, I think so many people in this world have that entrepreneurial bug and that entrepreneurial spirit. And to be able to provide an opportunity to go ahead and pursue that and find success along the way it's rewarding. It's awesome. And I know you feel that too on your end as well.
No, absolutely. And it's cheesy, but when you see it change people's lives, and again, even as like we talk to people through our process, and you start getting them out of the corporate brainwashing of this is what I've always done, therefore that's what I always must do. It's almost like a weight is off their shoulders. Like, oh, I can do anything. I can do something for myself. This really is attainable, and because it's not everybody can afford a McDonald's. Well, that's okay, sure. Right? Hey, not everybody can afford a StretchZone. There's still going to be things out there that you probably really can, and build it into whatever you want. I'm sure for you guys, you've got some really great empire builder owners out there, but I'm probably going to guess you've got somebody's got one or two locations, and they are just as happy as can be from what it's created for them.
So I tell franchisees all the time, I have this conversation, because like for us, there are economies of scale that come with, around that 2 to 3 mark. In a lot of regards, I truly believe it's sometimes easier to run 2 or 3 locations than it is one. Just from a training perspective, marketing perspective, so many different levels. But I tell owners all the time where it's like, listen, if you're happy with 3, doesn't mean like you have to be like, don't be consumed with like, I need to be the largest or I need to be the biggest in my region. Like if you're happy, content, successful, profitable at 3, and the lifestyle is good for you, enjoy it, right? And stop at 3. And so no, we actually have a lot of like former employees as well that become franchisees. And because we're low barrier, when I say low barrier of entry, right? Realistically, this is not perfect, the item 7 for every listening here to scrutinize it, but you're looking anywhere around 150 to 175 all in to get up and running, right? And the Pittsburgh situation much lower. With no build out. And when you have such a low barrier, it opens opportunity to not just funding, but self-funding, family, friends. And that's where you can have employees find the capital to open this up. And I also think that's where we are always very cognizant. We are not going to try to layer more fees or unnecessary expenditures on the front end, because we want to leave that door wide open. to as many people as possible to go ahead and experience business ownership for themselves.
You mentioned a phrase that some people maybe unfamiliar with business ownership or franchise ownership might not quite understand, the economies of scale, and how maybe having 2 or 3 sometimes can be easier, or even kind of, the cost aspect of this. Kind of explain what you mean by that a little bit.
Here's a great example. What market are you in? Or did you say that you're in?
We'll call half my life I'm in Tampa. We'll call it that.
Okay, so Tampa. So I was born and raised in Tampa as well.
Okay.
So let's say you have a market in Tampa and you have 1 unit in Hyde Park, right? And so Hyde Park is smack dab in the middle of Tampa, for the record, the major metropolitan area. When I have one area when I have one location, if I'm doing digital marketing, I'm spending $2,000 a month on digital marketing. There is a point of diminishing return, right? A consumer will only drive so far. You have some rarities that will drive as far because they have a real need, but there will be a point of diminishing returns if you start going beyond, like for us, like 3 miles, which we know, right? So if I start marketing, even if there's 3 million people around, if I start marketing beyond 3 miles, I'm just wasting marketing dollars.
Yeah.
If I put a store in Hyde Park and then West Shore, right? Now I can bookend, which I would call bookending the market. So now I can deploy marketing dollars with a little more latitude and flexibility, no pun intended, understanding that consumer will either go to either store. Right. So that same $2,000 might have a 2 or 3x return on that spend than what it did as a singular location. That's just one example. You can go through training and everything else.
And because as an owner, you don't care where they go; they're going to your location.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I know you can get some shared, even, like, Sally called in sick over here. Well, I may have somebody else that can run over because they're close enough.
For sure.
Really with that. No, that drive component. I'm sure you get people, the kind of candidates that are like, oh, but there's one, 5 miles over here. And you're like, I get 2 more in between there, because we're, let's be honest, we're lazy. We're not going to drive too awfully far or go out of our
100%.
way for things.
And that's the same thing as like when you join a brand. I think it's important for new franchisees to understand as well. Is people say, well, I don't want to go to Tampa because there's already 8 locations there, right? It's a major metropolitan market. And so at the end of the day, it's like that same economies of scale, albeit maybe not a 3x return because you don't own both stores. Right. You're still leveraging that brand synergy in the market because you have another location out there. So it's not a bad thing to be with other franchisees in a brand. That's part of being a part of a successful brand. Yeah. I think it's also another just kind of a misview from franchisees sometimes, because they want everything, right? You want the market, and at the end of the day, what you realize there's, all boats rise with the rising tide, and I think it's important to note as well.
Yeah, that other owner that's also spending money, like we are really and truly helping one another. They've done some of the harder lift of introducing the brand to a market. No, absolutely, I love it. With regard, probably I'm gonna throw 2 more questions at you. First one is with regard to Stretchstone itself. What have we maybe not talked about for the brand that you're like, oh man, I got to make sure everybody knows this?
No, I think, listen, the research studying the Stretchstone effect in this publication is massive and transformative for our brand. And so I think that is something that we touched on. I think the other piece is, it's helping us on the national account side. I think something that's new and really transformative, new vertical within the business is, pursuing the industrial demand. And what I mean by that is ever since we first started, we've always had kind of a demand on how to service and mitigate workers' comp for some of these more industrial players. And now that we're in 41 states, 421 locations, we can actually adequately service national accounts. And with the credibility of the study, we have a viable option for businesses out there. And so that's something that our franchisees are very excited about because it's all ancillary revenue for them. And that's something that we're pursuing. I think truly when you look at very successful service brands, not personal service as a whole, when they're able to tap into that B2B kind of marketplace and go ahead and foster those contracts at the franchisor level, the franchisees really win. And that's really how to take a brand to another level as well.
Yeah, I would assume you've got owners that are participating in community events or even corporate wellness. Again, we all just sit on our ass all day, right? And there's nothing healthy about that whatsoever. So again, I think for owners to even see how can they be creative, the free marketing and advertising, how can you be creative and get out there is probably a lot of fun for folks, right? So The other thing I want to ask you is kind of from a franchising space in general. I know you are a huge part of the IFA, which first we talk about that numerous times on this show, but I guess it's possible this is the first episode and they're late to the Franchising 101 party. So we'll forgive them. But what the heck is the IFA?
Yes, IFA is the International Franchise Association. And, it's funny because I view the IFA truly as an education platform. Like for me personally, like I'm not McDonald's, right? And at the end of the day, if you ask Matt Haller, if you ever listen to us, Matt, I think you're great. Truly, responsible franchising, maybe a little miss, but no, all jokes aside, I think they do really good work. But if you ask Matt what the IFA is, right, I think they're a lobbying arm, right? And they really protect the franchising space. And they don't protect it just for the franchisor, they protect it on behalf of the franchisee, right? And they protect the industry. And so that is truly what they do. And actually, I will say, being board member now, for those that are listening, so it sounds like people do know what it is, predominantly that listen to this. Yeah. They do, when you get a peek under the hood, they do a lot more than I appreciated as far as on really going to bat, fighting for and defending the industry, in a big way. Obviously, because they're so small, right? Relatively small to the big players. But when I say I view it as an education platform, everything I learned about franchising, like truly, when we first started about in 2017, going to the IFA conference was, incredibly formative, because there are people there, not just at the IFA board members, but like people that go to the conference. The franchising space is, everyone's fairly open, and which I've always appreciated. And even now when I go to conference and I'm speaking at the conference, and I still have things I take away like all the time, because I'm at we're at 420 locations. I'm looking at people that are at 700, 800. Right. Hey, what'd you learn? What are the mistakes that you made? What would you have done differently? And so I think there's always someone to look up to, and the IFA has done such a great job of opening the doors and trying to create the networking opportunities to go and patch those people together. So that's how I view IFA, even though they would say they're more protecting the industry. But no, that's my take on it.
No, and I think it goes back to that people component, because it is been in a handful of different industries over the years, and I grew up from an athletic standpoint where you weren't telling your competitor a damn thing you were doing, right? And in franchising, maybe like something like, from a lead gen, in some cases, people might not talk much about, but for the most part, it is an open book. And I think there's not, a lot of times people get in, they start moving around a little bit from that standpoint. But I think that's one of the things with the IFA. In fact, my wife and I were not going to go this year. And then kind of at the last minute, it wasn't so much for the, who's speaking or whatever. It's just all of the people to be able to see, and those relationships. And again, things you can just learn from talking to your colleagues and peers is so impactful.
For sure. I think when we first started going, it was more about breakouts, who's speaking, whatever it is. And there's still some breakouts I will pursue. Like international. We just went international. For me personally, like that is something that like I'm pretty sharp on. Like it's foreign to me, no pun intended. But but I think now it is more about the people, right? There's people I want to connect with. I want to see what's the latest in the industry. I want to see what industry trends are. I want to see, and sometimes it's validating, right? Because the problems that you're dealing with as a brand, you quickly realize maybe are not unique to you, right? Maybe it's more of an industry standard, and then you start hearing about, well, how are you combating it, or what have you tried? And so no, I think it's a great opportunity for anyone that's never
get in our bubble. We get in our bubble and we think, oh my gosh, this no, there's however many people have had or are currently having that, and for brands, for anybody kind of on the dev, the supplier side, but even franchise owners, I still don't think we talk nearly enough about the community that the owners bring themselves to be able to communicate. So the last thing I'll throw at you is, somebody out there listening that is wondering, Jesus, franchise ownership for me or not? You've been around this a long time now. What's maybe a piece of advice you would give somebody out there thinking about maybe becoming a franchise owner?
Listen, for franchise owner or business owner as a whole, I think as a business owner, I think franchising provides you many opportunities and safeguards and guardrails and protections that business ownership alone doesn't, right? And that's why you see franchising and franchise owners far more successful than small business owners, right? Proportionally. I think the advice is no matter how simple the business is, it doesn't mean that's not going to be hard work. And at the end of the day, no matter what you are told by potentially said FSOs, it's not a passive investment. And I think it's important because when you do come from the corporate world, and that's what I'm saying, it's empowering, right? When you're doing your own, it is exciting, and it's just like everything is yours. And when everything is yours, you also have to live with the recourse of a bad decision, right? Or a bad hire or whatever it might be. And by the way, I'm a big believer, like enjoy that part of it as well. You're going to learn a ton about yourself. Yes. Like that's what makes business ownership fun, but it's not always rainbows and sunshine. But with that comes a lot of freedom and a lot of excitement and a lot of opportunity. And there is no opportunity that you're going to have. We talk about changing lives or changing, their lifestyle, their families' lives, their children's lives. That doesn't come without risk, right? And that's part of why franchising is almost like this safe passageway to provide that opportunity. But no, the biggest thing is enjoy the journey, enjoy the highs, enjoy the lows, understand that there will be both highs and lows, and just keep working hard, stay positive, and good things will happen.
Tony, I love it. And in the meantime, go find your local stretch zone and get at the very least, go get a good stretch. I promise you will come away much happier and feeling better. Tony, man, seriously, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about franchising and about the stretch zone.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Hey, thanks again for tuning into the Franchising 101 podcast brought to you by Fran Coach. I hope these episodes continue to educate you on the amazing possibilities that can be achieved through franchise ownership. In between podcast episodes, if you still want to learn more about franchising and the ways in which Fran Coaching can help, there are a few places for you to check out. First, tune in to the Franchising 360 show. It is the only nationally syndicated television show about franchising hosted by me and Danielle Wright. Our TV show airs every Friday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on Biz TV. Next, check out the Fran Coach YouTube channel, which is Fran Coach for You. You can find tons of franchise-specific content there. Plus, you can catch past episodes of the Franchising 360 show. If you like to read, we encourage you to check out our book, Becoming a Franchise Owner. You'll never guess what it's about. And finally, when you're ready to take that first personalized step and explore the franchise industry further, please reach out to our amazing team at Fran Coach. You can click the QR code or find us at francoach.net. There is never any fee for our service, so let us help you create your better tomorrow.